Well, this is quite a story. To preface it, I came through many years ago, 30 some years ago, I came through an addiction. And in that process, I did not finish high school, didn't finish school. And so, when I started my healing journey, I had no idea that it was going to take me into a career and into what I would do the rest of my life. And so it was interesting. For years, I had this desire to write a book. I had this thought, and I had different subject matters that came to me through the years, and just never acted on it. I was probably scared. My grammar was terrible. My spelling was terrible. I didn't think that I could write a book because I didn't have an education.
Okay, everyone, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. I have an author with me today from Canada. Yay, Canada.
Yay, go Canada.
Mark is here with me today. Mark Gordon has the book Relationship Matters, the essential blueprint to building strong families and fostering healthy relationships. And yes, I'm reading from his website, markgordon.ca. Everything there at the beginning. How was that, eh? On top of being an author, being on now 3 of my podcasts. Yes, Mark and I now have a podcast relationship. Mark is really fascinated with whiteboards because he finds them quite remarkable. Mark, welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you here.
That was good. I see what you did there.
You see that?
Thanks, David. It's great to be with you again. We are genuinely building a friendship through podcasting. That's amazing.
It's fun. Yeah, and you're going to have to explain this whole fascination with whiteboards because that is quite remarkable. I love that. Great to have you here. I worked all night last night. I've slept for a little bit, so I'm a little bit weird right now. My wife would attest to that. So nice to have you here with me. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be with you and just love what you're doing.
It's great. We had you on How to Podcast just recently, and that episode is out there now into the world. And we had a great conversation there. Also had you on Dad Space to talk with him about all things dad. So we're getting like all different sides of you, Mark, which is fun.
Yeah.
Now we get to talk about your book. And if you've listened to the other shows, we've kind of talked about it in a roundabout way, but now we get to focus on the book, Relationship Matters. First, let everybody know where you are in this big world of ours.
Yeah, well, I'm in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, and love living here. We're very fortunate. Our kids all stayed, and they grew up and they've moved out and they got careers, but they've all stayed in the area. So our whole family and 2 grandkids are all here, and so we just really enjoy spending time together and having great family times. And there's lots to do in the Okanagan. It's beautiful here.
Yeah, gorgeous place to live. I went out there once, and I didn't want to come back. It was gorgeous. So I see why you're there. Tell us a little bit about your author journey. How did the idea for Relationship Matters, where did that start?
Well, this is quite a story. To preface it, I came through many years ago, 30 some years ago, I came through an addiction. And in that process, I did not finish high school, didn't finish school. And so, when I started my healing journey, I had no idea that it was going to take me into a career and into what I would do the rest of my life. And so it was interesting. For years, I had this desire to write a book. I had this thought, and I had different subject matters that came to me through the years, and just never acted on it. I was probably scared. My grammar was terrible. My spelling was terrible. I didn't think that I could write a book because I didn't have an education. And so I did blogs and I wrote the odd thing here and there. And the consistent feedback was that, the grammar was bad and this was bad. So I finally got an editor, a lady who was an English teacher, who was a friend of the family, and she helped me. She would go through my stuff, and through that process, I started to learn, sentence structure and stuff like that, just by watching what she did to my writing. Yeah. But she was so good because she really didn't want to change my voice in the writing, and yet, the grammar was bad enough; it needed to have some change, and so Anyway, so that's several years ago, many years ago. And then I developed this workshop called Relationship Matters to help people have healthy relationships. I have a huge burden. I see the pain that comes from broken relationships, from families, falling apart because of broken relationships, and I saw firsthand some of the destruction of that. And so, yeah, I felt like I had this message in me. I had an opportunity to start doing some teaching and training for life skills in recovery houses where people were recovering. Part of what I've dedicated my life to is help others who are coming through addiction to get to where to enjoy the freedom I've enjoyed by overcoming it. And so I was teaching this class called Relationship Matters. And one of the students came up to me after and said, Mark, you got to write a book. This content I've never heard before. It's got to get out there further and, write a book. And I kind of hummed and hawed like I always did when people would say things like that, and kind of pushed back a little bit. And then they said something very profound to me. They said, don't you think if the Creator gave you a nugget for the world, you're supposed to share it? And boy, it was like an arrow to the heart. It was like, just like, ooh, that hit hard. And that was about 2018 or so that happened. And so I kind of started making notes, and I started taking notes from the workshop. Now, workshop was just a PowerPoint slide deck and me talking in between. I don't use even full notes when I'm speaking. I just speak off the heart and my experience. But I started recording myself and taking more attention to what I was saying. And then I was blessed to run into another author who gave me a writing spine. I can't remember if that's the exact term or not, but it was basically just how to start laying out a book. And so I used that. I kind of made notes here and there. And then COVID hit. And I had the time. I got laid off. I worked for a nonprofit and I was leading that. And then I got laid off almost right away. The donations went away pretty quick at COVID. And so I just started to write more and more consistently. And I had this young lady that I knew that was part of that organization who went to take a writing course. She wanted to be a writer, and is now. And she was taking a writing course, and she had to do an editing portion in her course in college. And so she offered to me, hey, Mark, if you want, I need to practice. I'll edit your book for you as you're writing it. And so it was a great partnership. And then I ended up, working with Friesen Press, and they filled in all the other blanks for me. They provided a professional editor who actually commented on how they didn't have a lot of work to do. So this girl did a great job. Nice. And she would ask me questions like, she said, this sounds like you're coming in the middle of a sentence, like we already were talking about something. And so could you give me some background on that? I don't understand where you're coming from. And so she would ask me those great questions, because, when I'm in my own head, right? So I'm having this ongoing conversation all the time. So then I would write something out as though somebody knew the history or knew the background of it. And so she was really helpful in pointing out, hey, you got to, pretend that it's the first time somebody is hearing this, and you got to take the time to lay out the foundation for it and all that kind of stuff. So that's when I started to really pick up some steam. One of the things that I learned was just write a little bit every day, and don't try to write it in order. And that was very helpful to me. I didn't write the book in order. I took different chapters and different subjects. And really early on, I came up with a syllabus that was really helpful to me. So if you're thinking of writing a book, try to come up with some kind of syllabus or so. So for me, my book, Relationship Matters, it's, a blueprint to, a strong family and healthy relationships. So blueprint made me think about a house. And so, so if you want a house that's going to stand the test of time and is going to stand in storms, you need three things. You need a healthy foundation, you need a good framework, and you need a sturdy roof. And that became the syllabus. So it's in three sections. And the first one is a healthy foundation. And there's 5 pillars or guiding principles that actually give you that healthy foundation. If you practice them, your relationship will be on good ground. And then the framework is, how do we relate to each other? Where are we going in this relationship? And so I have, a whole section there on for families to develop vision and mission statements. Why do companies develop mission and vision statements? Well, because they want a bunch of people to go in the same direction. And then they have values, is the water and the river. So the vision and the mission are riverbanks, and the values and that you agree to are the water that keeps you flowing in the same direction. And so I show and take them through a process in the book how to do that. And boy, has it been transformative for families. Because now, instead of, I use an illustration in the book, like if it's the difference between, putting each individual family member in a dinghy and throwing them in the ocean. And eventually the currents will pull them apart and they're going to drift apart. But if have riverbanks, you're channeling that synergy, that energy, and the family's going in the same direction, and you'll end up at the same place. Even if you do drift apart a little bit, you'll still end up the same place. And so it's been a very powerful exercise. I have a story in the book with a family that I was called in to help with that were in crisis. I won't tell the whole story, but basically this young boy, 8 years old, was about to get kicked out of elementary school. They knew that I help families, so they called me and said, could you come and help? And I found out that young boy was acting out because he was trying to deflect his dad's anger from his mom when they would start to fight. And so he would start throwing things in his room and breaking stuff and deflecting the attention. So as I worked with the family, we discovered this. I took them through the process of doing a vision and mission and a set of values that they all agreed to. We included the kids in the process. There was 3 kids, and the 8-year-old participated. And what happened was they came up with this great vision mission statement that they wanted to be as a family, where they wanted to go as a family. And then the values and what they agreed to, how they were going to relate to each other. That's the framework. How are we going to relate to each other? And so what happened is a few months after we did this, the school noticed a marked change in the little guy. It was amazing. But a few months go by and you start to default to old patterns, and mom and dad are starting to fight. And he walks in the kitchen, takes him by the hand, walks him out to the dining room where they had made a poster with the vision, mission, and values. The kids drew it and made it. And he just pointed to it. He never said one word, pointed to it, walked away. Well, of course, the parents start laughing because they know exactly what he's telling them. hey, mom and dad, you're not living up to this right now.
Wow.
So anyway, that's the middle section. And then the roof is, I talk about what true authority and what true accountability is. And every family, every person, I believe, should have a coach, have mentors, have people in their lives that speak into their lives, and especially into their family life and relationship. I think, men need this as much as anybody. But it's basically what I say is that every person you invite to speak into your life and into your relationships becomes a shingle in the roof that protects you in times of storm. And so that's kind of the syllabus that I laid out for the book and wrote it in those 3 sections. And so I was able to free myself up to just write in the different sections that I felt inspired to at the time. And it's not a big book. And it has to be simple because that's how I get things. Yeah. And so it's just a very easy read. It's kind of a hybrid of inspiration, but also very tactical. It's very a blueprint. If you follow it, you're going to see a marked difference in your relationships.
Amazing. So how have you changed from before you started writing to having it done and in your hands? What did the process of writing do for you personally?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I grew tremendously through the process, because I don't know what it is. I mean, I've been teaching these principles for years, but when you collect them and put them into a format,
Mm-hmm.
it 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 drives it even deeper into your heart. It got so deep inside me. And then the other thing was, as you're writing it, now we have this legacy out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't very well not be living this out.
Right.
And so it actually almost renewed my faith. It renewed my commitment to my family and to being the kind of person that I wrote about in the book. Now, I do entwine my story in there a little bit because of, my addiction didn't happen for no reason. And so obviously I had some struggles as a kid, and those struggles carried into my adult life. And so, it was amazingly healing for me to write this out. The other thing is remember, this is the kid that didn't think he could write a book. I'd go into chapters and I know I've got this book in my heart, and I'd look around and say, well, who would read my book? If, how am I going to get this? It was just too daunting for me. And then I heard about this, idea of self-publishing and whatnot. And the tipping point for me was really that one comment from that student, and the fact that I started thinking legacy. I'm 62. And so I started thinking, what am I going to leave my kids? I don't have a lot of money to leave them economically. They're all doing better than me. But I could leave them a lasting legacy of my heart and what my beliefs are and what my love is for them. So I started really writing this book as a legacy. Long after I'm gone, my grandchildren are 5 and 3 at the time recording this. But what about their kids? And what about the kids after them? I want this to be a family legacy. So it really motivated me to get the project done. And now I think I have 3 more books in me. I'm going to do Parenting Matters, because I realized in the book it was around relationships, all relationships, not just family relationships. But I realized that there's I do a workshop called Strength-Based Parenting, and I feel like parents need help today more than ever. So Parenting Matters. And then I also have a real burden for leadership and the lack of it we see in our world and the crisis we see of leadership in our world. And so I have a Leadership Matters one that probably will come out there as well. And then I'm a person of faith. It was faith that really turned my life around, in faith in God. So I'll probably have one it's the only one that would be a real overtly faith-based. It's going to be Faith Matters. And so I think that I'll continue the series, but I probably got to get on that and start writing. Not a couple of weeks ago, I opened folders for each.
There you go.
Hoping that I would see it on my computer every day and it would get me to writing. So I got to get back into writing mode, but I'm a lot busier now because my coaching practice took off because of the book and my speaking practice took off because of the book. And so now I find myself fighting for time to do the writing. And so that's kind of
amazing.
That's kind of where that's at. Yeah.
I love how a book can change everything for you. Like going back before this was even a reality, this whole path would have not happened because of the book, right? That's really opened that door.
I got to tell you that with the combination, the perfect storm in a good way, the combination of COVID hitting, me getting laid off. I was there with that organization for 17 years. I did not picture myself ever leaving it. But I don't think I would have accomplished what I've accomplished if I'd stayed, and that did not happen. So the combination of that and then the results of the book, you don't make money really off a book unless you're John Grisham, or John Maxwell, but it is a great vehicle, a great tool. And I give it to my coaching clients. It's all part of the package, and it helps give them the foundational training. So when I'm coaching them, they already kind of know where I'm coming from. And then I also sell them when I'm at speaking somewhere, and I've done very well. That I sell mostly when I'm live and speaking, and people make a connection with you, and then I sell out every time.
Nice. And then the whole value piece of you saying, walking into the store going, who's going to read my book?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, how it feels now that it's out in the world and people are enjoying it, and you've been a faithful servant to that request of you should write a book, Mark.
Yeah.
It's out there now. How do you feel now when people start giving you comments and praise around how the book's helping them?
Mhm.
How does that feel now, that compared to that day when you were kind of struggling
Yeah.
with who would ever read my book?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the byproducts of this is I grew in confidence for sure. No doubt about it. Like those limiting beliefs that we all have,
Yeah.
that we all fight, they went away. I often tell people in my classes, I'll say that, how do you know you're growing? What's the tipping point of really knowing you're growing? And I always say, when you receive a compliment and it humbles you, it doesn't make you more proud.
Mm.
It doesn't produce arrogance in you. It actually produces humility. And I think that that's a good tipping point. And that's what I'm so humbled by the responses I get. Even just recently, I got a response from somebody I didn't even know owned a copy of the book, and they just said it really revolutionized how they saw relationships and changed their life. And you hear things like that, and it's like, wow, I am so blessed to be able to be part of just a little piece of somebody's journey is pretty amazing. That to me, that's true legacy. It's not how wealthy we become or how famous we become. It's really about, have I been able to impact? One of the things I discovered in my healing journey was I needed to know my purpose. And too many of us live by accident. And I always say you got to live on purpose.
Yeah.
And people complicate that. They don't know what their purpose is because they try to come up with an elaborate, I think we've heard so much around it that we make it complicated. My purpose, what I discovered is to be an encourager. That's it. That's my purpose. My whole purpose in life is to encourage others. Now, that's manifested and presented itself in many different forms over the years. Ran nonprofit organizations, faith-based organizations. I've taught in workshops, I teach, I speak on a regular basis. And all of that, my whole motivation and purpose in it is that somebody's going to walk away with more courage than when they got there.
Yeah.
And I'm an encourager. So that's that. And so what that has done is it's seeped into every area of my life. So if I have a server serving me in a restaurant, how can I be an encouragement to them today?
Nice.
Rather than, hey, you're here to serve me, you're not giving me good service, so you're not getting a tip. Like it actually seeps so deeply into me that I realized that everything I do has to be about encouragement. I can't compartmentalize and on stage I'm encouraging, and in a restaurant I'm being a jerk, right?
Yeah.
And so it really, really seeped deep into my heart. So when you know your purpose, it permeates every part of you. And it really drives you in the right direction. When you can discover that as a family, which is what's in my book, when you discover that purpose is as a family, man, it changes everything. My kids are all live on purpose. They know they live on purpose, and they know what their purpose is, and they live that out every day. And it's so awesome to watch. So yes, when I get those compliments, it's like, okay, first of all, it's confirmation I'm living my purpose, but mostly it just humbles me and says, wow, what a gift I've been given to be able to just encourage people.
Amazing.
And then to be able to make a living from it is,
yeah,
not getting rich off, but I'm making a living from encouraging people. How ridiculous. I mean, what's that old saying? When you love what you do, you don't work another day in your life.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really the story.
It's the reality for you. I love that.
Yeah.
So for your community that maybe is here because they saw your name on this episode and they have the book, they've worked with you in the past, they tell people about the great things you're doing. What would you like to say to your community that's gathered around the episode that are here to support you and they have been doing this for years? Your thoughts to them as they listen.
Yeah, no, I'm so grateful. I love every one of you. And you can have purpose, but if you don't have people to live it out with,
Right.
What's the point? And so I am so grateful for the community that I have. Over the years, we've met many, many, many people. In fact, I was last night, we were somewhere that I actually bumped into a young lady with her two kids, and she is in her 30s. And I first met her when she was 13 years old. And she was, we were able to, we were running a youth center at the time, and we were able to impact her life and her
Wow.
best friend's life deeply. And so we got to run in, this happens all the time. I get to run into my community all the time. And it's just so grateful. And I love to hear from you. And I love questions, and I love, that interaction. So, if you know me, I'm approachable. So I'm also saying, if you've been watching from afar and you haven't actually met me, go to my website and book a 15-minute discovery call. Let's meet.
Yeah.
Let's connect and say hi. Love to hear how the book or the podcast or my speaking, my training, whatever, however it's impacted you if we haven't met. It's interesting to me, I've mentored many people over the years, one-on-one, or, one on a dozen, whatever, I've walked with people for many, many, many years. And then this concept came out with this whole information age with the YouTubes and all of the podcasts and all this kind of stuff. And I heard somebody say one time that I can't remember who it was, but somebody famous mentored me. And I said, really? How did you meet them? Like, that's amazing. You got mentored by so-and-so? And they said, oh yeah, no, they've been mentoring me for years. And I said, well, how'd you meet? And he said, well, I've never met them. I just listened to their podcasts. I read their books. They've influenced my life so much. I feel a connection with them. And I realized in this age now that you're actually mentoring people when you don't know you're mentoring people.
Wow.
Think about the responsibility that puts on you.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
You're mentoring, David, you are mentoring so many people because of your podcasts. It's like, and people think that way now. And I've often challenged young leaders and saying, don't just be mentored by a screen, actually get to know somebody and ask them to mentor you. Right.
Nice.
But there is this idea that, so I've had people that feel connected to me that I've never met. And it's so interesting to me. And I hope that that's because there's an authenticity there that they're connecting with. But I know they would find the same person if they did that 15-minute discovery call. Mm-hmm. They would actually, I'm the same wherever I am. And that I've worked hard to get to.
Nice. Yeah, so over at markgordon.ca was also information about your podcast. You've kind of talked a little bit about that here. Let's talk about that. We're podcast listeners. We're listening right now to a podcast, and we're thinking, after this is done, I need more Mark in my life. Where do I go for the podcast? And tell me a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, well, the podcast is also called Relationship Matters, but the subtitle is Empowering Conversations, because I interview people with real life experience or professionals or both. Most of them are both. They're real life professionals who have experienced what they are professional in. And so I like that the best. And so, yeah, so it's a series of interviews. There's every once in a while I'll do a teaching on my own because a guest fell through or something. So there's also some good content on there for that. On YouTube, and if you Mark Gordon and Relationship Matters in the search, you're going to find me. If you hit Mark Gordon, you'll find a bunch of others. And if you hit Relationship Matters, you might find some different ones of that. But if you put them together, I come up first every time. So, or you can just go to my website, markgordon.ca, because I'm Canadian.ca. Yeah. And so just go to there, and then I have my podcast on there. It also gets it's on Spotify and Apple and Amazon and all the usual places. You just search it, and if you find one that it's not on, send me a note, and I'll make sure we add it.
Any countries listening to your show that kind of shocked you when you looked at your stats? You're like, oh my gosh, somebody in X country is listening to me. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I've had crazy experiences that way. I'm also a guest on a lot of podcasts, like I am today.
Ta-da.
And And so I was actually asked to be on a podcast in Belize. Somebody I knew from Belize. He wanted to talk relationships, and I knew he had a pretty vibrant podcast there. And so I went on it to find out after the fact that actually a local television station picks up his podcast and broadcasts it all over the Caribbean. And all of a sudden I'm getting messages from people in Trinidad, Jamaica, Belize, and I ended up picking up clients from those countries that, I did some coaching with. And so, yeah, it's amazing how far it will go out. With the world has shrunk, right? Yeah. So it's amazing to me how far it actually can go out and how many lives it can impact. And so, yeah, and I always encourage, I'm so passionate about the content, and especially when I have a really good guest on, which all my guests are, I really want it to get out there, get the reach out there further. And so I always encourage people, share this. Even this podcast, a lot of people don't think, the algorithms need the sharing and the liking and all those things. And I know YouTubers will say that, they're pretty frank about it. Hey, this is how I make my money, whatever. Yeah. But that's not you and I and people like us in the podcast, especially not all, but a lot of podcast community people. We just want to get the message out. Right. And so that helps us get the message out when you do share, like, and subscribe. And so I don't have a ton of subscribers on any one platform. I'd like to get all my subscribers to go to every platform and subscribe.
Yeah, there you
go. Because it just gets the message out. When you share it, if a video or a podcast you come across has impacted your life, that's a way that you can actually share it with someone else that you care about. And so I really encourage people to do that all the time. And I do that. If I come across a podcast I enjoy, I'm going to share it. I'm going to put it out there.
Yeah, and it's great. And the idea too is you can share the episode with somebody to listen to, somebody who could definitely benefit from Relationship Matters, when they're looking to build their family. This is a perfect episode to share, to get to know Mark, get to know the author, but then also all the information's there to purchase the book. And that's the idea for me for this show, is to take any barrier that might be in between us as someone who wants to buy your book and you, is to take that away. Now we feel connected with you. We've heard your story. We know more about the book now than we would ever have known walking into that big store, looking around at all the sea of books going, where do I even start? Right. That's the idea here. Now we have a great idea about who you are and why this book is in the world. And I think that's a great starting point to share this out with your friends and family and let them know about another amazing book that definitely can help their family.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's why I love what you're doing, David. You're helping podcasters, you're helping people. All your subject matters are all important, I believe, in today's world. And so, yeah, so good, so powerful. I'm so grateful for this kind of opportunity to be on a guest on your podcasts is a privilege. It's an honor, and I don't take it lightly.
Excellent. Everyone, it's markgordon.ca because in Canada, that's a thing. Go there and make sure you check out an amazing book that's going to help your family, a great gift idea to share with a loved one for their family's sake. Mark, thank you so much for being part of Living the Next Chapter. You mentioned more books coming in the future. I'm going to keep the door cracked open. Okay, a little thing in the door so you can come in anytime you want. And let's talk about the next book. You got some writing to do, so I'm going to release you to get to your writing, but come back and let's talk about the next in the series. I'd love to have you back again.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you, David. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Okay, everyone, go check out the show notes. Everything we talk about is there. You can click and go right to Mark's podcast. You can go to his website. Everything is right there. Because I know you're at the gym, you're busy, or you're driving, and you can't write something down. Just click the buttons in the links and you'll be ready to go. Thanks, Mark.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Right. Have a great day.
Thanks. Thanks for being part of the podcast again. Appreciate you investing time in the show and you for listening this far. Thank you. one thing to keep in mind is we are looking for help and some support for the podcast. If you are able to help support our show, our little podcast show here, we can go over to livingthenextchapter.com and all the instructions will be there to help support the show. It takes about $30 to $40 a month to do this, just for the hosting and all of that other stuff that we pay for. But if the show is giving you any value and you're enjoying what's happening here, would love any kind of support that you can offer. That would be great. And you being here and sharing the show helps us grow. Helps us get great new authors on the show, connect with other listeners, and build community. So whatever you can do to share this show today, I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here for Living the Next Chapter, and I can't wait to share the next one with you. Talk soon. Have a great day.